Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. We are going to move on to the next session, a round table. As you very well know, and it has been said today in a couple of occasions, the creation, the generation, and the improvement of skills in our industry with our workers is really important. The shortage of specialized, skilled workers is indeed one of the obstacles the European Union industry is facing and need to be solved in order to improve our competitiveness. The generation of more and better jobs, also making sure that we don't leave anyone behind in this transformation, is a priority, is a joint effort in Europe by the industry, by the government, and by the education sector. And this is a clear example of this partnership, these joining forces, because the focus of our discussion today is the initiative European Year of Skills, bringing the skills of industry, the skills that industry needs. And the Commission, as I said, has it a priority. As an evidence of that, the Commission has strengthened the presence of top executives from the Commission in Malaga for this event, showing, for example, the commitment from Commissioner Smith from employment to come and join forces with industry. Therefore, we are very happy to invite Director General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, Mr. Joost Korte, to come to the next session. He will be chairing a session with 4 panelists, Laith Altimime, Dirk Bantighem, Isabel Bafnes, and Caroline Villarouche. You will introduce them, Director General, and chair the session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Come and join us. Don't be shy. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause.
Yeah, please.
Merci.
We follow the picture.
Okay. So, thank you very much. Very happy to be in Malaga for the EU Industry Days 2023. I hope you had a very enjoyable start of these days and that you will be able to concentrate on all the next sessions. So I'm here to moderate a panel with 4 excellent speakers. Isabel Barthes, sitting next to me, she's the Deputy Secretary General of Industrial. Dirk van Tichem, the Director General of Euratex. Laith Altimime, who's the President of SEMI Europe, and Caroline Villarouche, who's the CEO of EIT Manufacturing. I will be giving them, each one of them, the floor in a minute, but let me first provide you a bit of the context of this panel. When President von der Leyen last year announced the European Year of Skills, I think she really triggered quite a big process of rethinking, and some people even say that there's been a paradigm shift within a year, and now everybody's talking about skills, and we've moved the issue up from what has been a nice to have to a strategic feature of the single market and indeed of the European social economy. Skills have risen enormously on the political agenda, and that is why it's so important that we discuss it today as a strategic element of competitiveness and now also of the Green Deal, of course. What is the issue? I can give you 2 figures. If you look at the unemployment rate in the European Union, it has never been so low. The average unemployment rate is below 6%. I've never seen figures any lower. And if you look at the job vacancy rate, it has never been so high. More than 3% of the jobs cannot be filled. So here you have, in essence, the biggest, I think, threat to the European labor market is here. We have too few people in the jobs, and the people that we have tend to not dispose of the right skills that are needed. In the paper that you saw for this panel, there were a number of other striking figures. I picked up, for instance, on the European hydrogen production capacity. If we want the production to go to 10 million tons per year, this would imply the creation of roughly 440,000 extra jobs. And 180,000 skilled workers alone are needed in fuel cell hydrogen manufacturing. If we look at the photovoltaic solar manufacturing, an additional 66,000 workers are needed by 2030. So now, as President von der Leyen said also, instead of millions of people looking for jobs, millions of jobs are now looking for people. And this comes, of course, against the backdrop of the so-called megatrends, where we have the green and digital transitions, the geopolitical fragmentation, also mentioned by Mr. Letta, a shrinking fiscal space, and I think what you can call a global race for talent. If you look at the figures in the EU, our calculations are that between now and 2050, the European labor market will lose about 1 million people every year. 1 million people in the working age between 20 and 64. Every year, 1 million people less. Well, that is also, I think, a stark reminder of how big the challenges is. Now, to do something about this, the European Union has actually been quite active. There are targets, there are lots of proposals on the table. I could mention the Pact for Skills, the sectoral blueprint alliances, individual learning accounts, micro-credentials, as well as funding. If we look at all the funds that are available across the EU in the different forms, cohesion funds, but also the Recovery and Resilience Facility, our estimates are that about 65 billion euro is actually available for upskilling and reskilling people. So we think we do a lot to help, but of course Brussels cannot solve these problems by itself. It can only be solved by business, by regions, I think also by schools, and the education establishment play a very important role here. So that's why I'm so happy that we have the experts here in the panel, and to tell us how they see the main challenges for their sector, whether they think that the European agenda that's being developed is the right one, whether there's more that we can do, or maybe we do too much already. That's also what I hear from time to time. So with that, I would like to open the floor and ask each one of you in maybe 5 minutes to introduce yourself and say what the main challenges are in your sector. Isabella, shall I start with you?
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So it's very happy to be here and have the opportunity to describe the situation in our sector. So I'm representing industrial workers in mining, electricity, and manufacturing industries. So all these sectors are going through massive transformation under the push of the digital and the green transformation. And the pace and the size of this transformation is massive. We all know about it. Some jobs will disappear. Actually, we are now in the transformation. We used to say some jobs will disappear, but now we have to say jobs are disappearing, jobs are being created, and in between, many jobs are transferred. So the challenge for us is to ensure that roughly 25 million workers are actually equipped with the right set of skills, that they are reskilled, that they are upskilled in order to meet the challenges of the green and the digital challenge. And there is no silver bullet. Sorry to disappoint you actually, but we don't have the silver bullet. But we believe that the answer is a holistic approach. First of all, we need industrial policy, because we need to create the job of tomorrow. And we need to create good jobs, because they have to be attractive for workers. They have to be attractive for new workers. They have to be attractive for women. They have to be attractive for young people. We also need employment policy. We also need training. We need training policy. We need also labor market policies. We need the involvement of the public employment services that help also organize the transition between jobs. we also need the social partners, because they are also the best place to identify the skills need, to see how qualification need to be upgraded. So what we need actually, I mean, we are now in the European Year of Skills, and of course there has been a lot of discussion at European level, but what we need now is a concrete outcome. And this is why we think that we need a framework that can help managing, anticipating and managing the transition, with at its core a right for training for workers. Because at the end of the day, what we hear for our colleagues from the workers is that access to training is not daunting, and especially access to training that enable workers to move to the next job or to develop their competence.
Thank you very much. Dirk, you are representing the textile industry. How do you see your sector in this context?
Thank you, Joost. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here in Malaga and to indeed share some thoughts and information about how we in the European textile industry try to address these skills challenges. At Euratex, we are, I would say, investing quite a lot in this topic. We are coordinating what we call the TCLF Pact for Skills. So the Pact for Skills for textiles, clothing, leather and footwear. And we invest a lot in that because we are convinced that people, skills, is one of the cornerstones of the competitiveness of the European textile industry. If you don't have the right people with the right set of skills, our textile industry, which is in any case subject to very strong, fierce competition from around the world, if you don't have the right people, we will not be able to remain competitive. So for us, that is the bottom line. It's not the only element that will help to survive the textile industry in Europe. It's about innovation, it's about level playing field, it's many other aspects, but skills is critically important. I would like to emphasize that maybe not all of you are fully familiar with textiles, or probably you think textiles is what I wear. Textiles is much more than that. It's textiles is what you see here, what you see here, what you see around, what you see in construction and automotive. It's a very diverse sector that requires very diverse skills and technologies. So for us, having the right people in the right place and make sure they are trained is critically important. The sector, the industry is going through fundamental changes, partly, I would say, challenged or imposed by the EU through this textile strategy, which is pushing us towards more sustainability, more transparency, traceability, offering higher quality products. So that puts a challenge on the industry, but once again requires making sure that we have the right people to perform this job. Finding the right people is probably the #1 challenge that our companies face. Last week I was visiting some textile companies in Flanders, where I come from. They say, Dirk, please find me the people. I will train them. I will offer them the job. Find me the people. So it's critically important to address that. 40% of the current workforce in the textile industry in Europe is more than 50 years old. 40% is more than 50 years old. And we employ around 1.3 million people in Europe. So our workforce is disappearing. And how do we attract young people to this textile industry, which not always have the best reputation? So we need to communicate more clearly about the changing needs, because textiles is all about digitalization, it's all about offering higher quality, sustainable products, circular business models. So we need to communicate, we need to make sure that we cooperate more and better with the education providers to make sure that they offer the new and right curricula, the trainings, the education programs that fit with the needs of the industry. So there's a lot to be said around that, and maybe we can come back to it later on in the discussion. But from the outset, I would like to emphasize that if the European textile industry doesn't have the right people with the right program, with the right profile, our competitiveness is at stake. And that's why for Eurotex we invest and we gladly cooperate, I should emphasize, with the European Commission through the Pact for Skills to implement, to develop a strategy and to make sure it reaches our companies.
Thank you very much, Dirk. Next speaker, Leith, you are representing here what is without any doubt also a very strategic sector of the European industry, so the semiconductor industry. How do you see the situation in your sector?
Yes, absolutely. So a very good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here and thank you for the opportunity. So as you mentioned, that I'm speaking on behalf of the semiconductor industry, and I think most of the challenges already mentioned. The semiconductor industry, so it's, I'm president of SEMI Europe. SEMI is a global semiconductor design and manufacturing association with 3,000 members worldwide, connecting all 7 regions of the semiconductor industry. With the key vision basically is to really navigate our member companies to go through the challenges. The exciting challenge ahead is that the industry, semiconductor industry, is forecast to grow to 1 trillion, to double by 2030. It's just under 600 billion today, is to double to 1 trillion by 2030. And also we know that Europe, with the European Chips Act launch, there's also the vision of the European Commission and the industry for Europe to regain the 20% of the global market share. These are most exciting times Europe has ever seen in the semiconductor industry. But the challenges remain European, but also at global levels, also as mentioned. It's, the semi-focus is really to support our member companies worldwide to grow, to meet that $1 trillion global revenue industry by 2030. And these are, you hear it on a daily basis, the geopolitics, the climate, supply chain, as was very much highlighted through the COVID, but also one of the most instrumental and pivotal challenges is the skills, is the talent is needed to grow this. And we will mention figures through the talk that basically on what we have today, we need to grow that 2 or 3 folds in order for Europe to achieve the 20% goal, global market share by 2030. The semiconductor industry was literally unknown or very much less known before COVID. But post-COVID has put the semiconductor industry very high profile in terms of, with the chip shortage for the automotive, that was the first trigger. But it is a fact that we're living the data age, the digital transformation age, with tremendous amount of data, connected devices, smart cities, cloud computing, edge computing. All this and everything we do in our daily lives is semiconductor enabled. So it is really fundamental to really understand the industry so that we can attract the young generation. I also alluded to the diversity, which is also instrumental. What you have in terms of percentage of women in the semiconductor industry is a fraction of what can be, which would allow us to really, far outreach to address the talent pool. So with that, semiconductor is really everything we do every day, but we also face similar challenges in how do we attract the young generation, because they are instrumental to really grow the industry and they are the future, if you like, the heartbeat of the industry to grow. And Europe has a lot of strength. They have world-class, state-of-the-art R&D centers in the semiconductor industry, automotive, medical, industrial IoT. So these we maintain leadership position at global level. So again, the skills and also meeting this exponential growth is instrumental to maintain Europe's competitive advantage in the global semiconductor value chain. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And finally, Caroline, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today and to discuss about this very important topic, which are the skills to succeed in this transformation in Europe. EIT Manufacturing, we are a public-private partnership co-funded by the European Union in 2019. EIT Manufacturing is one of the 9 knowledge innovation community supported by the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. We at EIT Manufacturing, we are a purpose-driven organization. Our purpose is to improve people's life through sustainable manufacturing. And in the way we do that, we have 3 main strategies as an organization, is ready to put people at the center of manufacturing innovation. It's to accelerate the green manufacturing, and it's also to foster competitiveness and sovereignty in Europe. Concretely, we are an association of around 170 partners across Europe. Industrials, academia, and also research center are part of our association. We concretely, on a day-to-day basis, have three main aspects we're looking at. The first one is really the time to market for the innovation. We accelerate the time to market to innovation. We have 2 calls for proposal a year. We invest around 10 million euro in bringing innovation related to the manufacturing space from the lab to the market. We also work quite a lot with the startup space by coaching, supporting startups in the manufacturing space, and we also invest in them and help them to expand their commercialization. And last but not least, which is the topic that brings me in this panel today, is around filling the skill gap we have in the manufacturing space. EIT Manufacturing has a different platform to skill, upskill, reskill workers. We have Skill Move platform, and we also have a platform which we will talk maybe more about, which is the Deep Tech Talent Initiative. Deep Tech Talent Initiative is an initiative which is coordinated by EIT Manufacturing and supported by the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. Deep Tech Talent Initiative has the ambition to skill 1 million people by 2025 in the deep tech competences. We also have some master degrees, PhDs, and summer and winter schools to secure that we covered all the upskilling and reskilling at different levels of the workforce. So very happy today to discuss more and to understand how we can unlock the situation we are in today around the skilling gap we have in Europe.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So after this introductory round of sort of an inventory of what the main issues in your ecosystems are, can I just ask the three of you to start with, just to go a bit deeper and say, if there's one thing that you need to upgrade the skills of your people, to find the right people with the right skills for your sector, what would it be?
Shall I start?
Please,
from a textiles. The first thing, as I said before, is we need people. We need people, and maybe we'll come back to that later in the discussion, to have more people in Europe motivated and willing to work for the industry, preferably for the textile industry, but I'm happy to share with the semiconductors
yes.
if possible. Then second, it's important to have that framework, to have that roadmap, what needs to be done. And that's where the Pact for Skills comes in. And as you know, we've been working on that as Eurotex together with the Commission to try to establish what are the most important targets, what are the most important things that need to be done towards this skills gap that we have. Skills gap on digitalization, on green skills, etc. We know that, so we knew what needs to be done. Now we're at the stage where we need to implement what we preach. And as you know, in Brussels, we preach a lot, and we talk a lot. Now it comes to implementation, and what we are trying to do with the support of the European Commission is to establish what we call regional skills partnerships. So try to mobilize at regional level, so no longer in Brussels, but at regional level, to bring together the industry, the textile industry, the education providers, technical universities, business schools, and the regional authorities to work together, understand the needs specifically in that region, in that area, and create this partnership where, I must say, the regional authorities will be encouraged to contribute also financially, to put resources on the table, because one must never forget textile industry in Europe. We have some large players, some very large players, but the large majority is small family companies. So they can't, to be honest, they can't have the resources to develop their own skills strategy. So if we can create these regional plans where the authorities come in, chip in, using structural funds, social funds, where there is a dialogue between the industry needs and the education providers, for us that is what we plan to do. That is what we try to roll out. And actually, in a few weeks from now, we will have a kind of a kick-off conference, again, co-organized with the European Commission, to really roll out these skills regional partnerships. Because, again, the time of, it's a bit of a boutade, but the time of talking is over. I think it's really action time, so to speak. And for that, we really need to go down to the region. And our role as Euratex, again, together with the Commission, will be to coordinate, to keep the kind of the broad perspective, to facilitate learning from each other, because honestly, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. So we can benchmark, we can organize peer-to-peer. So that is again what we will try to do to really put into practice what we've been discussing and reflecting on over the last few months and even years in Brussels.
Yeah. Thank you. Leith, if I can ask you once again to select one major issue that you think should be solved to make your ecosystem work better and to make it more attractive for people to come.
Yes.
I mean, you're obviously in a sector where there's also, I think, many people being attracted from outside of the EU.
Sure.
And how do you see migration fits in here?
Absolutely. So I think in terms of the one thing, so SEMI has been active. You know, we led, which comes to an end of this month, the largest European funded projects on skills, which ran for the last 4 years. And the goal of that was really to connect industry and academia so that we can, promote the industry. This is ending this month, but also as a result of the success of that, we have also the second phase of the METIS 2.0, what we call it, which is this Chip Skills Academy. The core focus is really to connect the industry with the academia across Europe. And this has been instrumental in bringing the academia to understand the industry needs in terms of profiles and in terms of skills. Otherwise, it would not have happened in that sense. This addresses, the intermediate, the short to mid-term gaps and the talent and the skills, but also in terms of profiles, but also on skills. However, I think, as I mentioned, and currently we are about 8-9% of the global market share in Europe. And we have something in the order of about 200,000 employee workforce in the semiconductor industry. And this, as you know, again, with the aging, we will lose that over time between now and 2030. So we need to hire to bridge that gap of the existing workforce. Moving forward, if we want to achieve the 1 trillion and the 20% division of the European Commission by 2030, this will mean that we have a talent gap of about 350,000 we need to fill. So this is, we can create the platforms that we have today, which have been instrumental to really keep the talent pipeline to maintain our industry growth and to compensate for the loss. But in addition to the, image campaign, in addition to the skilling, upskilling, retention, diversity, as a much grander scope is needed. And this is really looking at, again, under the Pact for Skills for Microelectronics, as a much grander platform is needed. And that is absolutely the industry and the academia are on the same level, but this needs to go beyond. Connecting, let's say, for example, member states, governments, both at regional and federal level, to be able to create the platform to address that. One example comes to mind is, 15, 20 years ago, there was the vision of the 20 by 2020, 20% by 2020, and there was the concept of the Airbus foundry, that came about. And if I couldn't put that into the same perspective, if we're looking at 350,000 to reach the 20%, not taking into account what we need, to compensate for those that leave and retire, this is a big order of magnitude that would require such across pan-European collaboration to really make it happen. And it needs to happen sometime very soon, because as I mentioned, 2030 is a few years ahead, and it would take maybe 3 to 5 years to really upskill, into the industry. So this would be the one thing that really is much grander. I would call it, let's say, the Airbus for skills under the Pact for Skills for microelectronics. And this is connected, industry-driven, absolutely, this is key because the industry is instrumental in navigating this. But the academia, I think they are far closer today than ever before. We see them participating in a lot of the semiconductor industry. And I think we need to go, the more grander, let's say the CHIPS Act, to really enable that so that we can deliver the talent and the skills that are needed in a timely manner so that we can hit the target by 2030 of the 20%. We have everything it takes. We just need the people to make this happen.
Thank you very much. And finally, Caroline, so one thing that you would need.
One thing that we will need to solve this problem? Yeah. I will need a magic wand for that. But I will say the one which I found the most important, which we need to look at, is rethink of the attractiveness of the manufacturing industry. There is certainly this challenge of aging population. We have more people retiring. There is a huge shift of technology, so we need to be prepared with the right skill to attract young talent and retain them. And there is this also challenges around the women in manufacturing, which is one of the sectors where we have the lowest representation. Only 22% of women in the manufacturing space. If we think about it, and if we were to raise this bar to a 40%, which is not even super ambitious, we would be talking about bringing 6 million additional talent as well. Yeah. So attractiveness of this industry to attract the talent, and then once we attract them, obviously we can work on the skilling and upskilling to address this technology shift we're having and that we're going to see even more in the coming years.
Thank you. If I can then address the next question to the social partners. So we have the trade union side here, and Dirk, I think you can represent the employer side. How do you see the specific role of the social partners in this conundrum? You mentioned, Isabel, that the right to be trained is one of your ambitions to get that introduced. We have in the European Union the official target that by 2030, 60% of the workers should be trained at least once every year. We're now a bit over 30%. How do you see the role of social partners in this context? Please.
I think it's a very good question. Thank you for asking it, actually. I would say the role of social partners, especially at sector level, is crucial because we are actually best placed to identify the skills need. We are also best placed to adapt the curriculum, but also we are also best placed to create the condition through negotiation of sector agreement, for instance, to establish a training right. Because let's be honest, it's very difficult for one company to adopt a right for training, actually, because there is temptation that there is a risk that workers would go to the next company. So, I mean, if you look at the reality in Europe, the sector level is the right level. It is also, we were talking about the difficulty for SMEs to train workers when in a number of countries, like yours, if I'm not mistaken, you have training funds actually, where at the level of a sector, companies pay part of, they contribute to this fund, and this is actually also helping SMEs to train. The problem, the reality in Europe is that you have this well-functioning system in some countries, but you don't have it in other countries. So this is probably our biggest challenge. What do we do? And I think it goes in the same direction of what Dirk was saying. We have very good, we have good example, but we now have to make sure that these good practices are disseminated and they are implemented. And social dialogue is definitely one of them.
Dirk?
Yeah, well, maybe surprisingly, but I think we, on that aspect of skills and people, we are quite aligned between industrial and Euratex. We discussed it not just here on the stage, but also on other occasions. Because fundamentally, we want the same. You want people and jobs, you want people to have good jobs. My companies want to have good people with good jobs. So our interests are totally the same. And I truly believe in this partnership, in this kind of social dialogue that we have. Of course, then you may have discussions, how do we get there? And it's discussions about competitiveness, discussions of salaries, conditions, and all that, which we need to have. But the bottom line objective is to maintain, I would say, high-quality jobs in the European textile industry. And that's where we are very much aligned. And I would maybe, to illustrate, we've been working together with Industrial in Southeast Europe. We had a kind of a joint project to analyze and discuss the competitiveness of the textile industry in Romania, Bulgaria, Croatia, where there is also historically quite an important textile industry. And I think not on every point, but on many points we agree. We agreed to go forward together to establish a fair social dialogue in these countries, but where, of course, the trade unions recognize that to be able to offer a high-quality job, you need to have a competitive company. And that's where the two things come together. So competitiveness is linked to high-quality jobs, is then linked to the wider discussion of the textile supply chain. That would maybe lead us too far. But maybe at this stage, just to emphasize that we are not antagonists in this discussion. Again, there are differences, but we do share a common objective, which is to make sure we offer a high-quality job. If the job is not high quality, we will not attract the people. It's very simple. And we need people. We are short of people. So it is a competition for those people in any case. So that, I would say, automatically brings us together.
Yeah. Well, yes, if you look at the figures that I quoted, and I think that are also in the background paper, so we have in fact an extremely low unemployment rate in the European Union, going down and down and down. Not the same everywhere, but I think there is real competition for labor. That is, of course, in a way quite a luxurious position that the worker find themselves in. It obviously also means, I suppose, that it needs to be, as you said, Dirk, very attractive. You have to make it attractive for somebody to go. The working conditions need to be good. The work-life balance needs to be good. Balance needs to be good. There needs to be a perspective. And all of these issues, I think, as you said, Isabel, there's not one silver bullet to solve this issue. I would like to go to another question, and that is, we touched upon it already. If you look at the way Europe can address this challenge of skills and lack of people, one solution, part of the solution is also migration, so bringing in people from outside the European Union. When we speak about migration, we don't speak about mobility inside the EU, that's already there. And I think we have reached probably the maximum there. There are approximately 13 million Europeans who are working in another country than the one they were born in. And this is a stable figure. So you could almost say that the potential for labor mobility inside the EU is not really there anymore. We seem to have reached the maximum, and the population are aging everywhere. So what about migration? What about bringing in talent from third countries? Leith, would you like to?
Yeah, sure, I'll be happy to. So I think we still have a lot to do within Europe, and I think, again, mentioned as the image campaign is always really at the top of the iceberg, that you need to make the industry attractive to the young generation, that are really looking for, exciting industry. So this is one, and I think there's still a lot of opportunities within Europe to promote the industry, and I think if I look at examples, concrete examples, SEMI has done, we're addressing across all the dots of the supply chain, and this is from, we launched a career website, for job seekers to look at, the suitable jobs in the industry. We have also just launched, the high-tech Q for schools, high schools, that we are doing the training at school so that they become aware of the industry and what are the industry demands. We have done also, what we call networking with the industry during semi-event. There's a lot we have done because we believe there's still a lot of potential in Europe, to promote, to keep the pipeline. So this is, I think, first order of priority. I don't think we should give up. We should maintain to attract the young generation to our industries, which is, again, as we hear, is really where Europe leads, in a competitive landscape. These are instrumental things we need to continue to use to improve the image campaign. Moving forward, I think indeed, mobility of migrants is crucial because the gap is too huge for the semiconductor industry. And if we're all fighting for the same, then I think we're order of magnitude higher. So absolutely, I think we need to look at the tools. We mentioned, maybe a year or two ago, there was, the movement within Europe from other countries across Europe to get, to come move and work in the industry because it's competitively growing. But now, indeed, I think to bridge that big gap, we need to explore other options like the migration. And there's a lot of, people out there. I think if we make, let's say, Europe attractive to live and to work in, I think we will have a great chance to get them over and participate. And I don't mean that just on skilled level, the industry is very short on technicians and operators. This is probably the first order that comes in because of the number of wafer fabs being built across Europe. This will be something that we could tap into very quickly and do on-job training while they're on the job. They can skill up and become specialists in 2 to 3 years' time. But also, of course, that goes beyond, in terms of technical expertise and the skills that are needed, in AI, in cybersecurity, in data, quantum computing and other stuff. So absolutely, I think it is essential, it is instrumental to go beyond what we can fill in to achieve the end goal. We need a much grander, pipeline to support that.
Isabel, maybe?
Yes. Well, regarding migration, of course, we're in favor of migration of workers, provided that these workers are granted equal treatment. But we are also very concerned about the long-term effect that this brain drain could have on these countries. I'm thinking, for instance, of Albania, where it's close to 1 million young people that have left the country to look for a better prospect in the Europe. So we also have to take that into consideration. I mean, we also have a number of migrants that are already now based in Europe. And if you remember, in 2015, in Sweden, faced with an inflow of migrants, the social partners concluded an agreement in order to facilitate the integration of migrants in the labor market. So, I mean, there are also other options that only promoting a talent pool. And lastly, I would say, I mean, you've mentioned you said in your introduction that there is now, a shortage of workers because the economic situation is rather good. But we also know that the industry is a cyclical industry sector, and it also we can envisage that we have. The situation will not be so good, and especially now since we have started really into, we are in the green and the digital transition. So we also have to envisage that we might have to reskill workers for other jobs.
Yeah. Dirk?
Migration in the textile industry is already happening. I was, coincidence, last weeks ago. I was visiting another textile company. They have around 300 people, 300 workers, 16 nationalities in those 300, among those 300 people. This is the reality. And they come from all around. Afghanistan, Cambodia, they come from all around. So my company entrepreneurs are desperate to find people to work in their factories. And how they manage, how do they get them from Cambodia into West Flanders? I honestly don't know. But so it is happening, it is necessary. What we need to do is to organize and regulate, because I'm sure that will be your concern, which I fully subscribe to. So towards the EU, can we have a dialogue about economic migration that is, it's a bit naive to say, but this detached from the emotions and the politics, because Europe needs workers to come from outside Europe, to integrate properly, to train them, to make sure they are well, received. Because if we don't organize it, it happens randomly, without control, without etc. So my plea, certainly from the textile industry to Europe, would be to engage into this dialogue, to try to set up a framework within which economic migration can actually happen. Because it is necessary for textiles, and I think it is necessary for the industry in Europe at large.
Caroline, please.
Adding a comment to that, I think migrant over Europe is already happening. Okay, with people moving around and so on. While bringing migrants from outside Europe to us could be obviously a way to fulfill this gap we have today. We don't have enough workers in Europe in the different industries you mentioned and in some others. We shouldn't forget that this is somehow a quick fix. We need to remind ourselves that we are working toward this green and digital transformation in Europe of the manufacturing space. And this will come with more robots, more technology, which will mean that we will need less worker moving forward. So migrant is definitely something that needs to be addressed, and there is an urgent need today, but we shouldn't forget also the long-term ambition we have.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you very much. As a matter of fact, the Commission is also working on what I think Dirk mentioned, a sort of a rational approach to legal migration. We are going to come forward with a proposal later this year, which is based on an assessment, I think, of those ecosystems where there is a shortage of workers, and there are many of them, and I think you represent several of them here. And then to try to combine that knowledge and have a pool of CVs from people from third countries, from which then the employers can draw good candidates. One issue that is there, we will not have the time to go too deeply into that, is also that we didn't actually talk about qualifications that are needed for certain jobs. And there is, even within the single market of the European Union, not one rule on qualifications. And the fact that you are working in a certain sector in one country doesn't give you automatic access to a similar job in another member state. That's also, I think, an area where I think the skill situation could be improved quite substantially. I would like to leave it here and thank you for what I thought was a very interesting discussion, for your contribution. Sometimes a bit difficult to hear.
Yes.
It's quite a noisy place. I hope that the audience didn't miss, but for me it was quite difficult to sometimes follow what was said. But other than that, thank you very much, Isabelle, Dirk, Leith and Caroline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.